So the Autodromo International Ayrton Senna, just on the outskirts of Goiânia, population of just over 1.5 million, 14 corners, 9 of them right, 5 of them left, featuring a near 1,000 metre start-finish straight where in the dry the MotoGP bikes are expected to reach about 340 kilometres an hour. Heavy downhill braking zone into turn 1, a fast sweep through turn 3. The track tightens up through turns 10 and 11 before there's late overtaking opportunity surely on the brakes into turn 13 as we round out sector 4. Turns 1, 4 and 13 are the heaviest braking zones around this Goiânia track.
Inside that top 5, great job.
Good afternoon and welcome back to South America. Welcome back to Brazil and welcome back to Goiânia as we are set for our first afternoon practice action in MotoGP in this part of the world in 22 long years, and this could be a very hectic and very busy start to this all-important 60-minute practice session, with the top 10 as always going directly through to tomorrow morning's Q2 session with rain in the air after mixed conditions dominated this morning's opening FP1 for the MotoGP riders. As mentioned, with rain in the air, you are going to potentially want to get in an early banker lap here. As you can see from these live pictures here in Goiânia, at the moment, those fans are still with the T-shirts and the shorts on. But there are some very ominous and threatening grey clouds looming overhead. There's been a few spots of rain falling just a few moments ago towards the tail end of the Moto 2 session. Moto 3 look like they might have got the best of today's opening action conditions as they had pretty much a full dry session. Still a few scattered damp patches around this Autodromo International Ayrton Senna. You can see there it's pretty blustery as well this afternoon, which is dragging in some of this heavy cloud. World Championship leader Pedro Acosta, sprint winner, runner-up in the Grand Prix in Thailand a couple of weeks ago. It's been a brilliant start to 2026, hasn't it, for the factory KTM start, leading the World Championship for the first time in MotoGP. And he was fastest this morning, as there was sort of a mixture late on in this morning session of riders that have remained out on rain tyres after a pretty damp start to proceedings. There were a few riders, including Jack Miller, the Australian on the Prima Pramac Yamaha, second fastest, who went first out on slicks. Miller actually the only rider inside the top 10 this morning that was out on slick rubber. We saw slick tyre action from Brad Binder, Alex Rins, Johan Zarco, home crowd hero Diogo Moreira, Luca Marini, Joan Mir and Fabio Quartararo. Yeah, and that's what it's all about really, as former world champion Jorge Martin just trying to feel for those spots of rain in the air, looking skywards. It is pretty dark, it is pretty grey as we get set for the beginning of this crucial 60-minute practice in the company of Matt Burt and Lewis Sotheby in the commentary box. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane, who's going to be straining his neck, Jack, as he looks skywards to see when this rain may fall. We were expecting some rain around sort of 1:15, 1:30 local time this afternoon. Thankfully, that stayed away. Let's hope we can dodge some of the heavy rain showers again this afternoon. Pedro Acosta fastest this morning, Jack Miller second on the slick rubber. Marc Marquez looking to bounce back from what by his normal standards was a pretty poor start to the campaign over in Thailand. He was fourth quickest. Lewis, you get the impression that this is going to be very, very frenetic early on in this afternoon session.
Fast and furious on this Friday afternoon, make no mistake about that. Of course, the riders are all trying to learn the track that's beneath them, but their focus might well be on the sky above them. The wind really picking up. It's quite spectacular to look outside our commentary window actually, and the speed at which the clouds are now starting to move across. It's a headwind for the riders coming down the main straight. The weather is coming from turn 1 direction and making its way down the the reverse direction down the main straight. So that's where the riders will be looking to try and understand what's coming in that direction and when it's going to hit.
Yeah, Jack just reporting from down in pit lane. There are a few rain spots. Let's go down to Jack and get the bang up to date latest. Jack, how's it looking?
Yeah, as you guys have said, the wind incredibly strong at the moment. The rain is falling here in pit lane, but thankfully it is only light. But this is going to be such a dramatic start to this hour session that these guys are going to have to go around a circuit they've done 0 dry laps on and have to risk everything in this opening 10 minutes, because it does, you get the sense, feel like rain is going to get heavier as we go through the next hour.
Thanks very much, Jack. Pit lane open at 4 p.m. I think the riders are quite keen to get on with this before the rain does start to fall any heavier. All of them have been for a quick look outside of the sanctuary of the pit boxes. We saw Pedro Acosta having a quick look. Pecco Bagnaia has also been out into pit lane just to gauge exactly what the cloud cover is doing. Bagnaia was 9th fastest at the end of play this morning. Of course, it was a couple of 9th place finishes over in Thailand that kicked off his 2026 as Jack Miller, well, just as we suspected, when the track did start to dry up this morning, it was Jack that rolled the dice and went out early on the slick tyres. The best of our slick runners this morning was Miller in second with a 1:26.775.
If I read Jack Miller's lips correctly there, I think he said 1 lap to someone off street. It might well come down to that at the start of this practice session. In the Moto2 session, which just came to a close, which felt like it was going to rain throughout the session, but ultimately didn't really rain all that heavily. We saw a massive posse of riders. In fact, the whole field rushed out at the start of the practice session because they knew they might only get 1 or 2 dry laps to really put any sort of representative lap time on the board. It was shades of that old Sachsenring race from 2014 when half the field started from the pit lane. I think we might see something rather like that in 3 minutes time when the red light at the end of pit lane goes green.
Marco Bezzecchi chasing what would be a 4th successive pole position in Q2 tomorrow and a 4th successive Grand Prix success. Bez destroyed the opposition this morning in the first sector. He was over 3/10 quicker than anybody else in split 1, so very much getting accustomed to the heavy braking zone into 1, the fast sweeps through turn 2 and 3 this morning in those mixed conditions was Marco Bezzecchi. So much attention, so much focus, of course, on pro Honda LCR rider Diogo Moreira, given the fact that he's Brazil's first ever Grand Prix world champion in Moto2 last year, of course making his debut in front of his home crowd this weekend, but with plenty of Brazilian roots and lots of Brazilian interest in the shape of Frankie Morbidelli, and he had a pretty decent start this morning as well, didn't he? Frankie on the VR46 Ducati, 5th fastest.
Yeah, of course, so much of the Brazilian interest from the thousands of fans who are certainly providing the atmosphere with the grandstands will be on Diogo Moreira, who was 18th earlier on today, but I'm sure they've got a soft spot for Frankie too with his Brazilian roots. Fermin Aldeguer then, well, these are conditions he could really do without in his first Grand Prix weekend back from a broken femur sustained at the beginning of January. I think the Grassini team might well say to Fermin when he goes out there, don't you worry about the top 10. We're not asking you to go out there and put it all on the line to get a place in Q2. All you need is laps.
Class performance this morning, you have to say, by Aldeguer. Has not thrown his leg over a MotoGP bike in anger since the Valencia tests mid-November last year. So to jump back on board, having been out since January the 9th when he fractured his left femur, a serious fracture in that left leg in early January, to finish 8th quickest this morning on his return, only 8/10 behind Pedro Acosta, who's well dialed in on that factory KTM. It was very impressive, that, wasn't it? Motorsport fanatics, aren't they, in this part of the world, of course. Tribute helmet this weekend, and
MotoGP race this weekend to have end of a challenge even the most experienced of MotoGP.
This feels like Q2 meets practice as well, blowing around this Goiânia circuit. The pack being led out then by Alex Rins.
So too, surely they must have been trying to seek some information at the end of that Moto2 session just to understand where are the...
And now 11. Will be hard on the gas.
Someone went completely straight on there into 60-minute practice session. Might all boil down.
Bender's gone down. Yeah, well, moments after Bezzecchi had a bit of a GP crasher here in Goiânia.
Yeah, at the end.
He just fell off the side of the bike there, didn't he, Brad Binder? We're going to get some reference lap times in here. Was Miller from FP1 this morning, a 1:26.
The Pramac Yamaha. Pramac will be saying rain as much drop as long as it stays dry. Already in the first.
Mark is the factory pretty right ahead of him. These conditions, Alvaria.
And that's Jack Miller just behind Mark as well. T3s by the end of this second full lap, potentially even the 20.
The exit up into 6 now, 1:22.67. The flying Frenchman is flying. He now at the back of Bagnaia directly ahead of him. We're going to get a great shot. The exit. So careful
this stage, because this is Bagnaia on personal best sector times at their very best, just to not ignore him, take stock of
the session. 1:22.534. She has to move it to the tricky conditions.
The 2026 MotoGP Brazilian Grand Prix weekend got underway with a dramatic and unpredictable Friday. From the very first session, riders were thrown into difficult conditions. The track was constantly changing. One moment dry, the next covered in patches of rain. That made tire choice and bike setup a real gamble. Very few riders were willing to risk slick tires early on, but those who did had a chance to gain a crucial advantage. As the afternoon session began, the rain returned once again, and just like that, everything reset. This was no longer just about speed. It was about timing, about being on track at exactly the right moment. And that's where experience made the difference. Johan Zarco was a standout performer of the day. The French rider perfectly judged the conditions, setting the fastest lap at exactly the right time. Right behind him, Marc Marquez delivered another calm and controlled performance. He didn't need to take unnecessary risks, he simply stayed in the fight. But the biggest surprise came from Toprak Razgatlioglu. The Turkish rider stormed into third place, outpacing several established stars. Meanwhile, young talents like Pedro Acosta and Fermin Aldeguer continued to prove that they belong at this level. Friday in Brazil wasn't just about raw pace, it was about control, awareness, and adaptability. And those who mastered all three walked away with a serious advantage.
One of the most inspiring stories of the day came from Fermin Aldeguer. Just over 2 months after his injury, still visibly struggling physically, he returned to the track. And not just to participate, but to compete. Despite the pain, despite limited preparation, he delivered a stunning performance. A top 10 finish, a direct place in Q2. This wasn't just impressive, it was extraordinary. On the other side of the paddock, things went very differently for the VR46 Ducati team. Franco Morbidelli made a costly mistake. He missed instructions from the pit board and ran out of fuel on track. At this level, that kind of error is rare, and the consequences were severe. He dropped all the way down the order, losing any chance of fighting for Q2. Fabio Di Giannantonio also struggled, unable to find confidence in the mixed conditions. For VR46, it was a Friday to forget. Then there was Marco Bezzecchi. He had the top speed. The raw pace was there, but he couldn't convert it into lap time. And in MotoGP, that's what matters. He ended the session down in 20th place, a shocking result for a rider of his caliber. Meanwhile, Jorge Martin, Alex Marquez and Fabio Quartararo kept things clean and consistent, and Yamaha, with 2 riders in Q2, finally showed signs of progress. Friday delivered everything: drama, mistakes, and moments of brilliance. As the session entered its final minutes, the tension reached another level. Time was running out, and every decision mattered. The track was still unpredictable. Some corners were drying, others remained dangerously wet. Choosing the right tire was everything. Several riders pushed for a late improvement, but not everyone succeeded. Luca Marini came painfully close, missing out on the top 10 by the smallest of margins. Meanwhile, Ai Ogura delivered one of the most important laps of the session. He set his time just before the rain returned and held on to P10. That single lap secured his place in Q2. Behind him, big names were left exposed: Marco Bezzecchi, Franco Morbidelli, Raul Fernandez, all of them now forced into Q1, and that changes everything. At the front, the top 10 was locked in. Zarco, Marquez, Razgatlioglu, separated by razor-thin margins. The final minutes weren't just a race against the clock. They were a mental battle, and only the calmest riders came out on top. As Friday came to an end, one thing was clear: nothing is certain in Brazil. Weather forecasts suggest more rain for both Saturday and Sunday. That means more chaos and more opportunity. The sprint race will be unpredictable. One mistake could destroy everything. And with several top riders starting from Q1, the grid could look very different from expectations. Then comes Sunday's Grand Prix. 31 laps, one of the longest races on the calendar. In these conditions, endurance and strategy will be just as important as speed. Tire management, consistency, focus, everything will matter. Experienced riders like Zarco and Marquez have the edge, but the new generation, Acosta, Aldeguer, are ready to fight. MotoGP is always unpredictable, but this weekend in Brazil could be something truly special, because right now anything can happen. And the story is only just beginning.